Today, we are beyond thrilled to be here with Chasten. He's the author of I Have Something to Tell You for Young Adults, available today, May 16th, and he's Chasten. Happy you are here with us on a Friday. Welcome to Friday in New York City.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Did you just get in?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
Flew right in.
So you're here, are you here for the weekend?
No, I'll take the Amtrak back home tonight.
Oh, lucky us. Lucky us.
Yeah. I wanted to take the kids to daycare this morning, so,
Yeah, I'm originally from Northern Virginia, so I'm very familiar with that Amtrak ride. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just cruising.
Yeah. Well, I want to get right into it. I mean, as Ariana DeBose could have written in her foreword to your book, Chasten did the thing, and he did it again. You did it again.
Thank you. Yeah,
How
she wrote the foreword before Did the Thing became a thing.
Yes.
But that would have been a better blurb maybe.
But how exciting as a theater teacher, theater kid, to have Ariana DeBose write your foreword.
That was really special. When I was thinking about people I wanted to share it with and, potentially people to shop it around to and ask for a blurb, I also wanted to make sure that I had voices that were similar to mine, but also very different than mine, like queer Afro-Latino woman, found her space and group in theater. And so she agreed to it, and I think I was pretty chill on the call, but definitely floored.
Yeah, for sure. So this book you have released and written before. Your memoir was released in 2020. And, I'm really curious how you went about adapting this to start. Your memoir doesn't shy away from some tougher themes and experiences. So, when you were adapting this for a younger audience, I read that you completely rewrote it. Mm-hmm. How did you approach that? I mean, how did you decide what you felt like this audience could handle? How did you, when were you like, I should give them credit here that I think they can handle this part of the story? How did you decide what to de-emphasize? What was when somebody said, let's do this for young adults, how did you approach it?
Yeah. So, maybe to peel back the curtain a little bit, typically when you write a memoir, sometimes in the publishing world, they will just approach you and say, we'll pay someone to adapt this, and then it'll be out there as a YA book, And I wasn't about that. I used to be a middle school teacher. I really wanted to do this the right way. I knew my audience. I knew what the goal was. It was to rewrite this book into something I wish I would have had when I was in 8th grade. And it certainly was a mountain to climb, figuring out what to keep, what not to keep, how to restructure the story, because the first book is very chronological. Yeah. This one, I wanted to kind of jump through time. Mm-hmm. Like when I was on the presidential campaign trail, I thought about that scared young kid back in the hallways and the lessons I learned from, that time in the closet or that time in growing up in a rural and conservative place. So the first book was challenging because you're asked to put your life story out there in 200 some pages. This one, I just felt like I knew the mission right away. As a parent, as a teacher, as a queer person in this country, especially with what we're going through now, what do I wish I could have handed my young self? And what do I want young people to take away from that story today in this climate?
Totally. And what was it like to revisit the story again as a dad and now with that level of experience?
Yeah. So I agreed to write the book before the kids were born, and the kids were born while writing this, and they really change everything. Now you start thinking about one day I might not be here and they're going to read this, and will it mean something? And will my words still matter to them? And will it inspire them or comfort them? And also just being a dad, you wear your heart on the outside of your chest. So much more sensitive and vulnerable and emotional about so many things. And thinking about maybe these words comforting them one day, the things that I would want to say to them if they were facing bullying or, challenges with their identity, or just growing up in an environment that makes them feel like they're outcasts or different.
Yeah.
My least favorite part of the book, I will say, is when you were talking about being bullied and then you finally reveal the bully was Becky. And I was like, oh no, Becky wasn't an ally. Oh no.
That'd be a great shirt.
I know, Becky from the bus. Yeah. It really would.
Becky wasn't
it really
an ally.
Would. Real fans. Yeah. So, your experience as a gay person in Michigan, it's a big part of the book. You write in a version out today, quote, "It felt like growing up somewhere like Northern Michigan made it impossible for me to be gay at the time." Sometimes we wonder if the laws suppressing stories about same-sex relationships and couples, or just that these people exist, are kind of designed to communicate exactly that, like to erase the possibility of being a gay person in America. How would have seeing adults take these steps to take away representations of you? How would that have affected you as a young person? Because in this, you really do talk a lot about, coming into your identity.
Yeah, I feel like if this were a therapy session, we could spend a whole hour.
Lie down.
Because sometimes I think about what my life would have been like had I not spent 18 years of my life hating myself, thinking that I would lose my family, my friends. I never really saw a future for myself when I was applying for college. I just didn't really have lofty dreams and goals because I was, sort of convinced that I wasn't going to make it that far. And what it would have done for me to have teachers. I know that back at my high school now, there are teachers who are out of the closet. What it would have been like to have role models, what it would have meant to have my parents sit me down and say, we just want to let you know that we will love you no matter what, no matter who you are, who you love, there is space for you here. And of course, that wound up to be true. I got to come back home after I ran away from home. My story had a happy ending there. But what would my life be like today if I hadn't spent so much time worried about the opinions of other people and frankly fearing, what would happen should my true identity be shared with the rest of the world? And that's, that's something that you can think about and process for the rest of your life. But in writing this book, I felt like I got to make great purpose out of some of that pain by turning around and sharing that with other people, saying it doesn't have to be that way. Here's what you can do for your students. Here's what you can do for your kids. Here's how you can make this country a better place. Here's how you can be a better ally. And here's how you can just learn to love yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, one of the parts of the book that was really heartbreaking to me in the original, and I think that you sort of smooth it over in the young adult version, but something that stood out to me is that, and definitely correct me if this is the wrong interpretation, but there were parts where it felt the way that you were sort of living your life is like you also didn't have an expectation that you were going to be happy.
Yeah.
Like that even if you pursued these things that, a person with self-respect and self-value would have, that it wasn't going to put you on the path that you wanted anyway.
Yeah, I certainly grew up hoping that maybe one day I could get married and have a family. And I, like many young gay boys, I was obsessed with theater and there's no way I'm ever going to make it to the big city or, make it on the stage. And I'm certainly, grew up in a time where marriage equality didn't exist. Yeah. The idea of same-sex adoption didn't really exist. I didn't see a lot of promising things in my future.
Yeah. Okay. Two things that I wanted to talk about just that you touched on in that answer. So one of the things you talk about in the book is just the impact of whatever queer visibility did exist when you were growing up. So you discuss Will and Grace and Ellen's coming out, those sorts of things. As someone who is now in, one of the most visible queer families basically in the country, what responsibility do you personally feel as a member of that family? And how do you personally handle the pressure of knowing you've got all these kids' eyes on you? You've also got the eyes of people in a negative way on you. How do you center yourself in that, with that level of visibility for yourself and your family?
Yeah, the only thing that I can do is be myself. And I felt this, during the campaign, this strong pressure to be everything for everybody. I write a little bit about that in both books, this everything and nothing mentality, be everything for everybody, but also don't stick out, don't embarrass people, don't embarrass your community. Everyone's watching you. You can't slip up. And I have just sort of pushed some of that negativity and expectation away because that's heavy to carry on your own. But I also don't want to be an example for every queer person in this country because I'm not every queer person in this country. I can only speak to my own existence and then uplift the stories and identities and experiences and realities of other people in our community. And so I think I understand the weight that comes from it and I take it very seriously. I know that people are watching our family. I know that people have high hopes for us to...
High hopes for a living.
Thank you. Can we get that out of that track? Can we bring that in?
Do we have to buy that?
But at the same time, I enjoy using this platform and this privilege to talk about other people in the LGBTQI plus community who have experiences vastly different from my own because we're a growing community, we're a vast community, we're an intersectional community. And I think we are stronger together. And I appreciate having the opportunity to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of the times where we do see you sort of speak up and it tends to be, you issues where they are, universally prejudiced against the LGBT community. You know, you speak out against, you know, hateful legislation, and you've spoken out against other homophobic representations, including when Mike Pence made offensive remarks about your family. How do you decide when you're going to publicly react to something? I'm sure there are calculations for you, and maybe you're like texting Peter, or how do you? Because there's cost benefits, so I'm sure that's a big, you know, that's not nothing to take to Twitter as Chasten Buttigieg and react.
I can't say that like there's like a flow chart I follow, like should I tweet, should I not tweet? But I understand that people watch everything I do. You know, how many segments has Fox News ran on tweets that I send, articles that pop up simply by speaking up and saying something. And so, you know, that means I have a platform, and that means people are paying attention. And so I try to weigh, like, would it do some good for people to see me speaking up in this moment? I will always defend my family. If I were to spend all day defending my family, you know, I would run out of time, because there are a lot of people out there with nothing but time on the internet, and I have things to do. Yeah. But occasionally, like, you know what? I'm going to speak up for my family in this moment, especially with other people with bigger platforms who should know better. And to me, it's like, what if young Chasten had social media and was watching a figure like me, you know, with a young family, and just trying to go about his life and live his truth? And people were saying this stuff about him. Like, what would it have meant for me as a young person to see representation like that? So sometimes I get in trouble because, you know, you don't always want to like punch down, or you don't want to give people a platform that don't deserve it. But also people are paying attention, and it, you know, can make people feel emboldened, or at least represented and cared for when you speak up, especially the trans community. Like, if you have privilege as like a gay white man, you cannot put all the expectations on the trans community to speak up for themselves. So that, to me, especially like vulnerable youth, like, you got to speak up. And as a teacher and as a parent, that is something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, I was thinking that as you were talking, and is like, you know, you read your books and you had immense challenges, but as you said, like, you are two white men who are in like a certain part of, like, assumed to be of a certain socioeconomic status, whereas like a lot of the community is not. So it sounds like that's weighing on you, is like, okay, if we're going to be a palatable version of people's that still need an entry point, how do you kind of think about that?
So on the campaign, it was really important for me to, you know, before I opened my mouth, to just start doing some listening. I think a lot of people could benefit from, you know, what we said in the classroom, putting on your listening ears first before you open your mouth. And so while I was traveling the country, I went to like hundreds of LGBTQ centers. I sat down with activists and advocates and educators, went to health centers, because I wanted to learn from other people. Because like I said, we are an intersectional community, and I wanted to learn, especially from the trans community, ways that I could be a better ally. I also had just a lot to learn. Like, I am not trans. I don't know what it means to be trans in this country. I don't know all of the barriers that are in your way. So help me be a better ally. So when I see things happening on the national scale right now, I think a lot of these people could benefit from just slowing down before jumping into a culture war, and just learning and listening and trying to empathize with people, like, as Americans who are just trying to go about their life and exist freely and safely. And so I understand that I have, you know, immense privilege in many ways. And so for me, it's just like, now that I was that young kid who never thought that he would see this day and this life and this happiness, and certainly this platform. So now I want to turn around and like extend a hand. Like, who else can I, you know, pull up on the ladder? What other stories can I elevate? And right now, you know, with at least writing this book, it just helps me think that maybe this could help other parents, other teachers, and other young people who are just questioning whether or not there's someone out there who is extending that hand, you know?
Totally. And you have a great, when you're talking about, you know, bullying that you experienced in the book, which I think is such an important topic for any like young adults who are reading it, you have a line where you say something to the effect of like, someone who's bullying you, they're probably hurting. They probably have something else going on. And I do think about that when it comes to the Mike Pence of it all, because it probably is pretty hurtful to see a mayor from your own state win the Iowa caucus and you're getting booed at the NRA. Like, that's probably hurtful. That's right. You didn't say it, but that's just a thought that I had.
Just drink from my cup here.
Just sipping from your
cup. Just a thought that we had.
Something that might have been hurtful for him.
I mean, so you were writing this book. It sounds like you started adapting it before you had your kids. Wow. So, I mean, I'm curious, you know, we've seen more increasingly these laws literally banning books. I mean, your books have a queer love story, I guess. Did that ever occur to you? Like, wow, like it's just crazy to think that this beautiful memoir about like hope and happiness and finding yourself and finding love, that anyone would think this doesn't belong in front of children.
Yeah, I mean, if it is banned, that would just be politics, because I am a former teacher and I wrote a completely age-appropriate book. But I also think, a lot of this book ban nonsense is it's just politics. And I do think some of it is, in an attempt to erase the queer community. And I like just the discussion of LGBTQ people in this country. Like if this book were banned because there's a young gay person talking about growing up gay in America, then you would literally just be trying to erase the story of a young gay person. And I think it's really funny that you and we probably grew up reading the same story about like a 14 and 15-year-old who fell in love in one day and then maybe got married, consummated that marriage off stage, and then killed themselves out of love. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
I remember being a substitute teacher showing me that movie at age like 10.
Yeah. And that wasn't inappropriate. But also, if you don't think Romeo and Juliet is inappropriate, which I don't necessarily think it is, we trust teachers. We trust teachers to make educated decisions. We trust parents to speak up for their children. Like as a teacher, I would have loved to have had more parent involvement. But these conversations about like parental choice and book content, I think is just a way of like guising the erasure of LGBTQ stories and people, because it's never about straight stories.
Right.
No, that's actually just reminding me that when we watched I think it's like the Romeo and Juliet from the 70s, we watched it in one of my English classes, and my teacher I just have such a vivid memory of my teacher making a speech being like, "You will see a butt in this movie, and everyone has got to be cool or we're turning it off."
Yeah, a man in tights, just tights. That was the most obscene thing I'd seen.
And it was
heretofore.
Drag?
Yeah.
Yeah, Romeo and drag.
Yeah. I think now we're on to our fun question segment.
Yes.
We're moving on from queer trauma.
Check.
Well, I did want to get into some theater kid stuff. I'm the resident theater kid of the podcast.
I'll allow
it. Number one, I guess this is a more serious question, but as a theater teacher, you know, so many queer kids find refuge in their theater programs, in the theater department, maybe even in a time where they're not comfortable being out yet, or they don't even fully know themselves and their queer identity yet. So how did you approach that as a teacher in creating a space for them to, you know, you talk, I think in like the first chapter about all the like things your teachers would say to be like, he's eccentric, he's quirky. Like, how did you find space in your program for those kids without putting a spotlight on them that wasn't for the stage?
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge advocate for theater education. And I used to incorporate theater education into our classroom work in social studies and English. And then when I was teaching theater, what was most important to me wasn't necessarily the subject matter on the stage. It was creating an environment in which we were all allowed to be goofy, eccentric, creative, which, you know, we focused on teamwork, listening, empathy, showing up for one another. And those are the great lessons that I took away from theater. When I was in theater as a young kid, I was there because I could pretend to be anybody but myself. So I could be loud and goofy, and I could be really energetic, and that was talent, right? Yeah. But what I was doing was running away from myself. I didn't have to be Chasten. I could be anybody or anything on the stage. And so I knew as a teacher, some of those kids seeking refuge in the theater classroom were just looking for a space in which they could let the rest of the world fall away and be somebody else, even for 45 minutes. I've always tried to incorporate those lessons, you know, in mission into all that I do as a teacher. But I knew in the theater classroom that was really important, you know, for some kids, a really, really important space, because you could pretend.
Yeah.
And sometimes pretending for young people is surviving, because you're pretending in the hallway, but you're pretending as yourself. And when you come into the theater space, you know, you're the king, you're, you know, the singer number 3, whatever. You're just pretending, and you get to feel alive and talented and special in that space.
Did you have like a favorite musical or show to put on with the kids? Was there one that like clicked that you felt like with your students more often?
We did this Harry Potter satire one year.
Oh my God, amazing. You're talking to the right person
like,
again.
The satire was great because like it invited kids to be goofier and goofier.
Yeah.
It was like, get
Yes,
goofier,
and.
like yes and everything, right? And it was supposed to be like really cheap. So like their robes were like old graduation gowns, right? And they're riding around on like old brooms.
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
And I had these kids who like did not talk to each other, not become friends, but I think just empathize with one another because you're in that space, you're working on this project, and you see one another in a different light because you're doing this goofy thing and you're making people laugh together. And I could teach them a lot in social studies and English, but I loved being a theater teacher because I felt like so many other life lessons came out of those experiences.
Totally. And just sidebar, scale 1 to 10, how excited are you for the Wicked movie?
Oh, 2 parts?
Yeah,
Are you
I know.
kidding me? Capitalism,
Sometimes,
Yeah, they're like the gays and capitalism.
we can do 2 parts.
Yeah.
One part of your book that I really related to when I read it, you kind of discuss your securities pretty candidly. I am also, I don't know if this still applies, but I am also the less buttoned up, worse with money, less practical member of my marriage. And I just really related to how you discuss sort of like broaching certain subjects with your husband, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Transportation Secretary. But, I was thinking a lot, I imagine your husband's transition into the administration put greater demands on you to sort of handle the household, especially as you've welcomed children. How did you manage all of that change?
I mean, to give him a lot of credit, actually, we have a pretty fair balance of home life. So obviously, when I'm working from home, that means I technically have more ability to do laundry.
Are you telling us that men are capable of equal partnerships?
Yeah. Well, I sort of hold him to it, and he is a great partner in that sense that he also understands it's important to carry your weight, and it's not like he's coming home being like, I am a cabinet member. I will not be folding the laundry. But
he tells me you'd be like, yes, you are.
Yeah, but I'll do more meal prepping for the kids. He'll do more like laundry folding. I will at least get it washed and into the dryer, and then he will fold it. It's my least favorite.
Yeah, the folding is really where that's where it really gets me. Because I'm also in a building where like my laundry room is in our basement. So it's like once I get it all back up the stairs, I'm like,
I don't want to do that.
now
Folding laundry was optional until I
Yeah.
started living with my partner. He was like, you got to fold this stuff. You got to pay your bills and you got to fold this stuff.
Yeah.
So I really...
He is fantastic at divvying up workloads. And
Does he have a spreadsheet?
he always has a spreadsheet. Not so much for like home life.
Okay,
but,
good.
It'll be like, I'll tell you what, I will go to Costco. I'll take both kids. So I will push a double stroller and drag a cart through Costco.
Yeah.
And like get all of our groceries. And I'll go to Target and get all the things they didn't have at Costco. And I'll be gone for 3 hours. And while I'm gone, can you please fold the laundry and then like tackle the pile of bills? And like every weekend is a negotiation. Like
that's genius because he's leading with, you don't have to go to Costco with the kids.
Yeah.
You're folding laundry.
You're kind of like push and pull. So, and it's always different, like whenever there's time. But what we have found out is like, it's usually easier if someone has both kids. Sometimes we'll divide and conquer. Like I'll take one of the kids, he'll take one of the kids. But if you have a kid, focus on everything.
Advice to twin parents or expecting twins parents. That's fascinating.
So usually just try to give one another a break.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for work. Sometimes it's just like, how about you go for a run with your friends, in the morning, I'll handle breakfast and morning playtime, and you can have like a couple hours to yourself.
Wow, that must be the most I think that might be the most practical advice we've had. It's like one person takes them both and the other person does their stuff. Yeah.
What's like
then you swap.
Yeah. What's the most magical thing they've done recently?
The kids?
Yeah.
Everything. You know how people say like, oh my God, someone's showing you pictures of their kids. Like when someone pulls out their phone, especially if someone doesn't have kids, but like I'm obsessed with my kids. Like they are so cool and funny and beautiful. And like Penelope had a messy bun this morning that was just like on point. And she like points at the little drawer by the front door and says glasses. And she gets her sunglasses and she like puts them on her face in her stroller. And she's like ready to go out the door with her messy bun.
A woman who knows what she wants.
Did they have fun at the Easter egg roll?
It's incredible. I don't know if it's like fun at the Easter egg. There's like a ton of cameras and it was like hot and Penelope didn't want to wear her, little jumpsuit that I got. I thought was really cute. It's just
wasn't her style.
But like anytime I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders or I'm disheartened by politics, I turn off my phone and I get down on the floor and I play with my kids because they are so incredible, and they remind you of what's important, what matters, and like their vocabulary is exploding. Gus is like obsessed with birds. He points out every bird, every dog. And you're like, yeah, there are a lot of birds in this book. Like, I stopped noticing birds, you know? And he like waves at every bird. So they just...
Do you notice their relationship to each other and like how
they're very different people.
Interesting.
Yeah. Penelope likes to be with me all the time. Gus is very independent, loves reading. He'll play with like magna-tiles for like 20 minutes by himself. No interruptions.
You know, there's a place in New York City where it's like a summit. It's like a gathering place. It's just full of magna-tiles. It's like on the weekends, it's like crazy. It's the place to go.
He will build like a cube with magna-tiles, and then Penelope will go, no, and then crush it. And then he will just like rebuild the cube, and she'll go, no. But like he doesn't get upset. Like it's just a game. I love it.
Oh man.
Really cute.
Oh gosh. Something to
So precious.
I can't wait to see what she grows up like. I also love how much of your memoir is about dating, and specifically, how dating men can be a challenge despite all the rewards we just talked about. You met your husband, Peter, on Hinge. What advice do you have for people on dating apps?
Oh man. I remember when I went on a date with Peter, I was like pretty stressed out on the apps.
Oh, really?
Like so many bad dates. And I was really tired. And I just started being more forward about what I was looking for, what I wasn't looking for. I didn't want to waste my time. Pete kind of pokes fun at me at dinner parties sometimes about how forward I was on our first date.
Really?
Just like, here's where I see myself going. Here's what I'm interested in. I'm not really down to get my heart broken again. Like I had terrible breakups and, but I don't get the like, I just watched How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days on the airplane the other day. I don't get the like stress we put on ourselves to put someone forward that is not truthfully us. Like, why would you want to pretend to be someone out of the gate and then reveal yourself to be somebody different? And so I remember being a little forward on the first date, but ultimately that was a good thing.
And you guys have been talking for a while when you had your first date, right?
Yeah. So we've been talking for about a month, and then I wound up driving from Chicago to South Bend, Indiana.
See, talking on the apps for a month can work.
Yeah.
I assume you brought it over to text.
And we had two FaceTime dates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I have a similar thing with my husband in that he makes fun of me for how forward I was when we first got together, because we had like known each other around, and I had been in a relationship, got out of it, saw him at a comedy show, and he was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "Single, actually."
I love that.
And hey, here I am married.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I do think it is ironic that I asked him on our first date, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, no. I was also thinking the whole time, because it is a pretty prominent theme, is fishing. And I was like, did this man have a fishing photo in his Hinge profile? Did you have any fishing? Yeah.
No.
No, you didn't. Despite actually being a skilled fisherman, you did not have a holding a bass picture in your Hinge profile.
No.
That's straight culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what his profile?
Yeah, well, that's how I found out he was mayor, because he had strategically chosen a picture of himself speaking at a podium with his name on it.
That's
so I
a choice.
Googled it. And he was like, I wanted to get it out of there.
Yeah. That is smart, though, because it's like, how do you bring up that you're mayor?
Yeah.
You should just put it out there.
Yeah.
Like,
But at the time, he like wasn't Pete Buttigieg.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
I mean, he was mayor of
Buttigieg,
South
yeah.
Bend, but it wasn't anything like today. But it was very intimidating, and it was almost a turnoff, but worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. Speaking of when Secretary Buttigieg takes the kid, are there any shows that he won't watch that you have to watch on your own? Like any guilty pleasure TV shows?
Oh, man, we do not watch
Really?
TV much anymore, but it's hard. Like, we will pick one show at a time.
Yeah.
I just tried to catch up on Succession last night, and I fell asleep.
It's a little, yeah.
It's
a sleepier one, yeah. Did you watch The Diplomat?
So he wants to watch The
Yeah, I
Diplomat.
bet.
He's like, can we finish, one show? No, I started Yellowstone, and I was like, hey, I'm starting
Now
the
you're
show.
a dad.
And,
You're officially a dad.
Well, people kept telling me to watch it. So like the first 2 episodes were on the plane. And I told him last night, I was like, I'm starting Yellowstone, and I think you'll like it, but I can't handle juggling multiple show schedules with you. So I'm just going to let you know that I'm watching it.
Yeah, that's
Can I
fine.
make
you wanna talk about
a sleeper comedy recommendation from the pod? Jury Duty
Yeah, incredible.
on Prime is so funny. It's
Did you finish it?
I just started. I just watched the first couple episodes, but it's 12 actors and one guy who doesn't know it's not a real jury.
Oh my
and
God,
it's
stop.
so
It's amazing.
funny.
And it's a good dude. They found like the best guy.
they found the sweetest
like
man,
this. Yeah.
and everyone in it. But some of them I know a little bit through like comedy things. Everyone is so funny. It's
This
like
is
all
incredible.
improvised. It's so good. Highly recommend Jury Duty. And the episodes are like short and it's an easy watch. And I mean, I was laughing out loud.
I love it.
very
I did
funny.
watch
It's very
Hacks
funny.
without him. And the other two, I was obsessed with them.
Oh,
which
the other two
came
just
out.
came out.
yesterday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so good. So good. Okay. A few more rapid fire pop culture questions. What is your favorite female vocal performance of all time?
Ugh. See, this is where people are going to be like, oh, give your gay card back.
We ask all men this question, by the way.
Straight men?
We were just
I need
saying
a reel of straight men answering this question.
we're gonna start. We had a couple questions that we asked Ari Shapiro that were really fun. We were like, oh, we should ask like all gay men that come on the podcast, but we realized that was prejudice. We don't have a lot of male guests. We're like, we'll just ask all men that come on the podcast. So far, it has only been gay men answering the
has
question.
only
What's
been
your
Ari
favorite?
See, this is why I could never be on game shows because I feel like my brain freezes when it
Yeah.
comes to like superlatives. I don't know why my brain is immediately like Whitney Houston singing the national anthem.
That's what that's literally one of the answers we came up with.
No way.
Yeah.
What was the one that he said
He
something
said
else, but
Beychella, which we were like, that's
Beyonce Coachella
Yeah.
performance. But then
was an interpretation.
I
Yeah.
presented Whitney Houston national anthem. I think that
No
is
way.
Yeah. I mean,
Gay card returned.
Yeah.
as a single performance of one person standing and singing one song.
Yeah. Have you ever been to the American History Smithsonian in DC?
Oh, listen.
You-
I'm a Nova girl.
Okay, you get it.
Yeah. The First Lady's Dresses exhibit is one of my favorite things.
I was just there taking my parents through there, and when I was coming through the flag, like the flag exhibit, they had a video compilation of people singing the national
wow.
anthem, and I remember sitting there being like, "You better have it. You better have it. It better be in
It'd be
here."
homophobic if they
Give me
did.
the and then she was in there. Like,
yeah.
Did they have "Let's Get Loud"? They have that one,
Oh,
or was that the
Fergie one?
anthem? Or no, that was
J-Lo,
but she wasn't
singing,
doing
but
the
she was
anthem.
singing "This Land Is Our Land," and she
Oh.
added "Let's Get Loud," which is one of
Oh.
our favorite moments in
What, a bunch of-
of all time.
Like
Yeah.
freezing people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Fergie singing the national anthem.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did you?
That was
You
also-
would have been there.
Sorry, this is
in
not a
person.
rapid fire section.
No,
No, you would have been there in person for "Let's Get Loud."
Sure was.
Wow.
Probably one of the 4 people out there going, "Woo!"
Wow. Yeah, we talk
what I
about
would've
"Let's Get
done.
Loud" often.
Yeah, it's really a moment in the
I feel like
canon.
if you invite J-Lo to the inauguration,
Speaking of, that does bring us to our second of 2 rapid fire questions for our men. What's your
Great.
favorite J-Lo movie?
I was gonna.
There's no wrong answer.
I immediately
Yes.
wanted to say Made in Manhattan, but
That was my answer too.
really, well,
Nobody said that, as in Ari Shapiro didn't say that.
of all the men we've had on the show, none of them have said Made in Manhattan.
No.
She
Yeah,
has a new action movie coming out, right?
I think so.
Isn't it called like Mother or something?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
do you have a favorite Broadway show?
It's a hard
No.
question
Yeah, you don't
for
need
any
one.
theater kid to answer.
Yeah, I mean, Little Shop of Horrors was one of the first ones I saw. Incredible. I just saw Ben Platt in Parade.
Did you?
Incredible.
I need
Yeah.
to go to Parade.
Let's go.
I
Saw Sean
Yeah.
Hayes in Goodnight Oscar, which was incredible.
Have you seen Titanic in New York? Because I know
Everyone
you're a
keeps telling
Celine
me.
fan. Yeah.
I was just here, was it last week, 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, to tape the Drew Barrymore
Yeah.
show
Oh,
and
yeah.
brought my mom and was determined we were going to go see Titanic, and it was dark that night.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good. The like off Broadway little shop that's going around right
Yeah.
now here is really good.
I felt like a good, like a gay rights passage is like taking your mom to New York to see Titanic.
Absolutely.
She's like, "Are we going to see Lion King?" Like,
Yeah,
better.
no. We're going to do a Celine Dion jukebox. Yeah, I'm seeing it for the 3rd time next month.
Incredible.
Yeah, Amanda is like the Titanic stan.
I don't know why. I just went the first time and I was like, this is home.
It's joyful.
This is home.
It's
Yeah,
joyful.
Absolutely.
Well, there, far.
Wherever you
you
are.
are.
Wherever you are. Absolutely.
There was one last thing I wanted
Great.
to tell you before we send you away. We had your husband on maybe a week out from the 2020 election, and I will never forget that when we finally got to ours, he was so on message the whole time, professional. And when we finally got to, I was like, we're gonna ask our silly question at the end, which is what is your election night wine of choice? And the way your husband was just like, well, of course, it's a wine from the great state of Michigan. I was like, this is a professional. And he was like, and you get out the vote to Michigan. And I was like,
yeah, he's just in the zone.
I was like, and that's why you get Pete Buttigieg on the campaign trail for you.
Yes.
So
I was so impressed.
in the zone.
Yeah.
Truly. It was the most in the zone thing I've ever seen. And I was like, I remember we logged off and I was like, damn, he really did that.
You were definitely probably on back-to-backs today. Thank you so much. That is our show. Until the End of Democracy, I'm Amanda Duberman, and this is the BetchesSup podcast. Bye.